So let's get into the next big topic when it comes to embodiment. This one to me is huge. This is one of the best tools that I've learned and that I constantly am using because this is just foundational to a human experience. And this is the emotional guidance system. Emotions do not lie. We are taught to believe this in modern society, to not trust in our own emotions. They are not random, they reveal alignment or misalignment. The emotion is real, but the story attached to it may not be. I want to reiterate, emotions are real, but the story you are writing may not be. So what do I mean by it's revealing your alignment or misalignment? I'm talking about positive and negative emotions. When you are perceiving a positive emotion, you can think of it as this is what God is perceiving you like. If you're perceiving yourself like divinity, you will have these positive emotions, reaffirming that you are seeing yourself in the loving light like the Creator loves you. While if you're in those negative emotions, it is the grace of the Creator showing you where you are not seeing yourself in its own divinity. Most people try to suppress emotions, but embodiment means listening to them. This one is huge. People are suppressing their emotions. I mean, let's just look at the laundry list of things people are just consuming on the daily basis so they are not listening to their body. They're getting distracted. Whether it be all these chemical soups of foods that they're eating, these pharmaceuticals, these drugs, or all these dopaminergic activities like scrolling on the phone. We have a endless amount of laundry list of things that people are suppressing their emotions and distracting themselves so they do not listen to their body. This is why meditation is huge, because it allows you the time and space to sometimes relearn how to listen to the body. Emotions are not speaking to our circumstances. They are not telling us to do anything. Only speaking to us to show if our perspective is in alignment with the source. And lastly, bliss is any emotion fully felt. Sadly, I don't think most people have felt bliss, at least since they were a kid. Bliss is any emotion fully felt. This includes negative emotions. When you fully feel a negative emotion or you fully feel a positive emotion, you reach the point of the paradox, the point of the truth, the point of bliss. Because as a human, you came to feel all the emotional spectrums. You are the rainbow bridge. And so, if you're not fully feeling the negative emotions or not fully feeling the positive emotions, which most people in modern society are not feeling both, they're not feeling bliss. While it's hard to say if someone is feeling bliss, obviously, I think my greatest example of the first inclinations that you're really starting to fully feel your emotions is examples like when you're deep in nature or you're watching a sunset, not distracted by the phone, but fully in the present moment, watching the sunset, seeing all the colors, feeling the wind, the smells, or being on top of a mountain and seeing the landscape is a great way of starting to understand what bliss fully feels like. And so let's look at this diagram of the emotional guidance scale. As you can see, there are vortexes spiraling either upward or downward. And so with positive emotions, which are just upward spiraling energy, we can see how there are levels to the emotional spectrum of the positive and negative emotions. So starting at the middle, it would be on the positive side, contentment, and then on the downward side, boredom. You can see how these two are very closely related. As we travel upwards on the spiral, we can see hopefulness, optimism, positive expectation beliefs, enthusiasm, to passion, until we get to joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation. These are really high emotional energies in our body. Now let's look at the downward spiral. So from boredom, we go downwards to pessimism, frustration, irritation, impatience, overwhelmness, disappointment, doubt, worry, blame, discouragement, anger, revenge, hatred, rage, jealousy, insecurity, guilt, and unworthiness, and then fear, grief, depression, powerlessness, victim. And so actually most people in modern society sadly are stuck in this fear and victim state. And it's only once they start to feel these emotions fully and start to feel these upward spiral emotions do they pull themselves out of this downward spiral. So really, this is the freedom that God has given us, this ability to transmute emotions and to have this free will of how do we experience our reality through these emotions. So emotion is just energy and motion. Emotion. So let us look at the Hermetic principles to help understand this emotional guidance system. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything is vibrating is a huge concept that is needed to understand the emotional guidance system. As well as another Hermetic principle, everything has its pair of opposites, the yin and yang, polarity. So both of these concepts of Hermetic principles can also be described through quantum physics and the wave-particle duality. And what I mean by all of these is that your emotions play by these metaphysical laws. Emotions have two sides and are just vibrating either faster or slower, like the temperature of the air. So we can see with this picture, a cold air is just slower moving particles and hot air is just faster moving particles. This is the same with your emotions, which we'll get to seeing direct experience of what this means. But before that, I want to really emphasize that energy is stored in the body. Emotions, memories, energy are held within the body. What is not felt and expressed is getting stored. We'll get into this later in the presentation, but this is where we get tightness, where we get inflammation, and where we have dis-ease. And so learning to listen to the body, to your emotions, this beautiful guidance system gifted in the avatar that God has given us. And so now let's get into it. Emotions, duality, and chakras. And so with this chakra system, we can see what emotions are associated with what aspects of these energy centers, and from there we can also see its correlations to the physical body, the mental body, and so much more. But we can see from this diagram that I'm showing that there is the negative side and the positive side to the emotions. I want to really reiterate that there's nothing wrong with the negative emotions, but it's just the quality of the emotion. It says per se, like the cold air, energy that is not as movement, is pretty stagnant, with positive energy being alive, very high in vibration. So let's start from the bottom at the root chakra, the emotions in red. So the negative are the fear and lack. So when you have an unbalanced in the root chakra, you have a lot of fear and a lot of lack. While when balanced, you have a lot of safety and groundedness. It is also associated with the earth element, as you can clearly see through the positive safety and groundedness. Moving up to the sacral chakra, we have guilt and sadness being the negative emotions, with the positive being pleasure, and I would also add creativity. Negative emotions for the solar plexus would be shame and anger, with the positive being confidence. Then we have negative emotions for the heart chakra, grief and heartbreak, and the positive being compassion, and I would also add joy. The negative emotion for the throat chakra is suppression, with the positive being authentic expression. So suppression of your authentic expression versus authentically expressing. For the third eye, it would be confusion, with the positive being clarity. And then the top at the crown would be disconnect versus unity. While there's many more emotions that can be umbrellaed to all of these emotions, I think these give us a good concept of how everything is just polarity and vibration. There's the negative, the yin aspect, and the yang aspect. The cold aspect, the positive aspect. It's all just vibrations within our system, within our experience. And so the beauty of the human experience is that we have the ability to transmute any of these emotions, any of our experiences. So if we fully feel fear and lack, and we fully love this aspect of ourselves, of these negative emotions per se, we can then transmute it into these positive experiences. So to fully come and surrender to the fear or lack of dying can then get us into feeling the safety and groundedness that life has to offer. And same with all these other negative emotions. I'm going to go up a few more. To fully feel this depression, sadness, and guilt, then we can fully feel pleasure if we can fully feel it on both ends. And then let's look at shame and anger at the solar plexus. To fully feel the anger and shame, on the other end, we can transmute it to confidence, to pride. Now let's expand across that concept with the ego and its core beliefs. So the ego is the mind's conflict with reality. It is just the thought patterns of separation. In modern psychology and modern spirituality, there is a lot of confusion about what the ego really is. A lot of times people are talking about killing the ego, creating this idea of a separate entity within their brain. But more simply, the ego is just that mind. It is either like the reptilian mind or just the mind itself. And so while ego death is a very profound experience and a crucial one, as Jesus said, to follow me, you must lose yourself. To be embodied is not to just be constantly ego death. If you've ever constantly been ego death, you realize how unpractical that really is. So let's look more in depth about the ego so we understand what it is and its role when it comes to emotional guidance, regulation, and embodiment. So the ego has only one false belief: separation. Let's say that one more time. The ego has only one false belief, and that is separation. That's because everything in creation is fundamentally unified. Unity is the basis of our experience of this creation. You cannot name me one thing in this whole reality, in this whole universe, that is separate. And so we can dissect separation further so we can understand it in our stories a little bit better and in our emotions. So we can have it be lack, attachment, or control. This lack can also be understood as the fear, attachment as the grief and sadness, and control as the anger. So you can see this pairs up perfectly with the bottom three chakra systems. Lack being the root, attachment being sacral, control being the solar plexus. Why this is important to understand is that when you use the chakra systems to understand the spiritual pursuit, the spiritual practice, and embodiment, you begin to realize that these are the only three chakra systems that you actually have to work upon. All the higher chakra systems are already gifted to us, and so it's us unclearing these false beliefs in these three lower chakra systems to gain more energy, more access to reality as it truly is, the raw experience, the present moment. And so, upon that, we must realize the goal is not to kill the ego, but have the mind be utilized properly. The New Age community, so many spiritual pursuits love to talk about killing the ego. And while I don't have inherently any issue with that concept, I think that leads people astray at a certain point of the journey. That is because the ego is you, it is your mind. And so if you're not truly loving the ego, then you are still stuck in the illusion of separation. The ego got you stuck in a spiritual bypassing aspect. This is why some people call it the spiritual ego, as once you become spiritual, once you've gained some spiritual understanding and experiences, the ego, your mind, knows as much as you know of yourself, and so then starts to utilize those spiritual concepts to bypass and create more separation. And so some people who are really about just killing the ego, I always pose this question to them and just in general: would you want a sharp intellect or a dull intellect? Well, obviously we would want a sharp intellect. We do not want a dull intellect. And so we want our ego to be sharp. We want our mind to be sharp. And this is why the analogy of having our mind like a knife is so perfect. We would want a sharp knife so that we can cut, dissect, discern things in our experience. But if you do not know how to wield the knife, then you're just cutting yourself. And this is what most people are doing with their mind, cutting themselves with the knife, with their intellect. So now let's get into our humanity's superpower, requalifying emotions. This is the unique power humanity has, the ability to transmute and requalify energy. That is why we prefaced all of these hermetic principles, these energetic vibrations of emotions, because we have this unique ability of requalifying emotions. So do not suppress the energy, but see its mirrors. And so here's this framework of a 5-step way to requalify the emotions. First, you must feel it and not suppress it. To climb the mountain, you must take the first step. So if it's still a shadow, you do not see it, you do not feel it, then it is once you start to feel it and see it, then you're taking the steps to requalifying the emotion, to healing yourself. Then it's to locate it. Where is it in my body? Where is it in my experience? We got to really get clear on this, because the emotions, the energy is not in the mind. Memory is not stored in the mind. Emotions is not stored in the mind. You can think of the mind as more of a CPU chip. It's just the processing power of our experience. And so really finding it in the body is very important for requalifying the emotion. Then it is to understand it. What is it showing you? What is this emotion showing you? Where are you either in alignment or out of alignment? Then we move to allowing it to move. This can be through the breath. This can be through movement, through singing, or just through straight awareness. And then once all of that, we redirect the energy into that higher expression. So once we fully feel this fear, this lower negative energy, once we are fully capable of feeling it, locating it, understanding it, and allowing it to move, we can then redirect the energy into now being able to hold more of this higher expression of energy. So once you are able to fully requalify fear, you're able to feel way more safe and grounded.